All right, let's break down one of the most common yet least understood reasons why even super qualified people can totally bomb a job interview. It's this silent process called catastrophizing, and it can hijack your brain at the absolute worst possible moment.
You know that feeling, right? The interviewer asks a question you 100% know the answer to, but suddenly there's just nothing. It's just static. Your memory feels like a locked file and you've just lost the password. It is so frustrating, it's embarrassing, and it feels like a personal failure.
But what if I told you that's not a failure of character or you not being smart enough? It's actually a failure of bandwidth. Your brain, in that exact moment, is going through something that is shockingly similar to a DDoS attack. It is being flooded with so many internal requests that it can't process the one that actually matters, the interviewer's question.
Okay, so let's get right into the mechanics of this cognitive attack. What is actually going on inside your head when you freeze up like that? And what's the name for the distortion that kicks this whole thing off?
Well, the culprit has a name, catastrophizing. And it's a very specific type of cognitive distortion where your mind doesn't just worry a little bit. It immediately jumps to the most extreme negative conclusion possible. It's not thinking, oh, I might mess this up. It's thinking, if I mess this up, it is all over.
And here's the thing, this internal spiral, it doesn't just stay internal. It shows up in very specific, very observable ways that can totally undermine your entire performance, even if you prepared for hours and hours.
I bet you might even recognize some of these. You go completely blank on a project you led for 2 whole years. Or you do the total opposite. You just ramble, burying the important stuff in a sea of unnecessary context. You might find yourself talking way too fast, or starting an answer, deciding it's wrong, and then trying to fix it on the fly until you're completely tangled up. And of course, there's the full, total freeze. So the crucial point here, the big takeaway, is that all of these behaviors, the rambling, the freezing, the overcorrecting, they all stem from one root cause, cognitive overload. Your working memory, which is kind of like your brain's RAM, it has a finite capacity, and in these moments, it gets completely maxed out. Now, this is what I find so fascinating. Look at how this breaks down the DDoS attack. On the left, you've got all these internal requests flooding your system, while you're just trying to answer the question. You're thinking, are they judging me? That sounded dumb. What happens if I don't get this job? Do I sound smart? Each one of those thoughts eats up processing power, leaving you with almost zero capacity for the stuff on the right. Actually listening, remembering a good story, and just speaking clearly.
So this all begs a pretty important question. Why? Why does our brain default to predicting absolute disaster in a situation that, when you think about it logically, is just a conversation in an office?
Well, because to your brain, it isn't just a conversation. An interview checks all the boxes for something our ancient brain wiring is built to see as a major threat. It's a high-stakes social evaluation.
Your brain's threat detection system just goes on high alert. It's a perfect storm of triggers. You're being externally evaluated, the outcome is completely uncertain, there's a really clear power imbalance, and maybe most importantly, the whole situation feels like a direct threat to your professional identity and even your personal self-worth.
When that threat system gets triggered, it doesn't reason, it just reacts. It activates one of our most primitive survival responses: fight, flight, or freeze. In an interview, freezing isn't a sign of incompetence. It is a hardwired neurological reaction to what you perceive as danger. Your system is literally prioritizing survival over storytelling.
And the stakes feel so incredibly high because we subconsciously connect the outcome of the interview with our very identity. The internal story isn't just, oh, I didn't get the job. It becomes this really toxic belief. If I fail this interview, it proves that I am not good enough. When a simple conversation carries the weight of your entire self-worth, it's really no wonder your brain treats it like a life or death situation.
So how do we diffuse this, right? How do we stop our brains from just hitting the panic button? Well, it all starts with a fundamental reframe, shifting your perspective from seeing the interview as a verdict to seeing it as a signal. This slide lays out the two mindsets perfectly. The verdict mindset, that's all about judgment and perfection, which turns all your attention inward. You're constantly monitoring yourself. But the alignment mindset, that changes the whole game. It's a conversation about fit, not a judgment on your worth. The goal shifts from this impossible standard of perfect performance to just clear communication. And your focus moves from yourself to the task at hand, answering the question. And let's be real, you can't avoid being judged in an interview. That is literally what is happening. But you can change your goal.
Your job isn't to seek approval or to avoid judgment. Your job is to effectively translate your skills, your behaviors, and your value into a language the interviewer can actually understand. Think of it not as self-promotion, but as self-translation.
And this builds into this really powerful chain of signals, your core professional identity that shapes your behavior. That behavior is best shown through concrete stories from your experience. And those stories, when you tell them clearly, create a really strong signal of your true capability. See, catastrophizing breaks this chain. Our goal is to reclaim it and get back in control. Okay, now for the most important part. Understanding the problem is one thing, but knowing what to actually do about it in the moment, that's another thing entirely. So how do you interrupt this catastrophic spiral when you feel it starting?
First, let's set a realistic expectation. You probably can't stop that initial flash of anxiety or that very first catastrophic thought. They're just too fast. But, and this is key, you absolutely have power over the next thought. So the goal isn't to eliminate anxiety, it's to stop the chain reaction. Here is a simple 3-step technique you can use in real time. First, notice the signal. Don't fight that feeling of a racing heart or a tight chest. Just acknowledge it. Ah, there's that feeling. Step 2, name the distortion. Give it a label. Mentally say to yourself, this is catastrophizing, or that's the DDoS attack. Just naming it helps separate you from it. And finally, step 3, refocus on the task. Deliberately pull your attention away from your internal chaos and put it back on the interviewer. What was their question? What's the one thing they need to know right now? This simple sequence can stop that spiral right in its tracks.
Ultimately, just understanding this mechanism, that this is a predictable cognitive process and not some personal flaw, is incredibly empowering. It moves you from being a victim of the reaction to an observer of it. And from that position, that's when you can start to manage it.
So the next time you walk into that room, the question isn't whether or not you'll be nervous. You probably will be, and that's okay. The real question is, when that feeling hits, which story are you going to choose to believe? The one about disaster or the one about your actual value?
If this hit home, don't leave it here. Go to the creator's profile. There are more tools, breakdowns, and videos that build on this and help you actually change how you show up in interviews.